There's something magical about a fresh snowfall. The stillness is a hushed reminder to reserve some quiet moments during the holiday season. Good evening. I'm Jack Hemingway, and welcome to Incredible Idaho. Our show tonight is about snow, or rather the lack of it. We seem to be off to a fair start this winter, but we're going to need an awful lot more if we're going to break out of this 6-year drought cycle. As predicted, the drought triggered widespread range and forest fires in Idaho last summer, but none was as devastating to wildlife as the Boise Foothills fire. Although there were animals lost in the fire, mainly bird species such as wild turkeys and forest grouse, it wasn't the fire itself that was so damaging to wildlife. It's what little was left behind. Wildlife managers often use fire as a tool. A burn area can leave what scientists call a mosaic pattern, a stretch of land like this that combines mature timber stands with pockets of fresh green grasses and shrubs, rich in nutrition. This fire created healthy habitat for deer and elk. But when an area burns too hot, all the plant life is destroyed, and even the islands of habitat that usually tend to survive a cooler fire go literally up in smoke. Last summer, the nation's largest wildfire of the season raged northeast of Boise, burning 257,000 acres of land. When the flames retreated, it was evident that the fire had burned hot, ravaging miles of critical wintering habitat for deer and elk.
And if you look back up in here, most of this is dead. Some of that may resprout, but most of it's gone. There's just skeletons now, and there's even the stuff that looks like it's still alive. It's probably going to die anyway. But
Fish and game biologist Jerry Scholten is in charge of the Boise River Wildlife Management Area, a 32,000-acre tract of land in the midst of the burned area.
We've got about 1,500 deer that are going to come down in here this winter, and there's really nothing left for them to eat, especially if we have snow cover like we have today.
This is just a portion of the winter range that burned, habitat that wildlife depends on. About 10,000 deer and 1,000 head of elk will find little to eat in their traditional wintering grounds this year in the Boise Foothills. A potential crisis that has wildlife managers preparing for the worst.
It's going to depend on how much snow comes in, how cold it gets, whether the animals are going to relocate. We didn't get a lot of green up this fall. We did get some. If those areas are available to the animals, some of them could survive. We have reduced the population somewhat in here, so it could help.
Hunting is another tool biologists use to manage wildlife populations. For the first time in almost 20 years, Fish and Game authorized a special archery hunt in the Boise Foothills. It has a twofold purpose: to remove some of these animals that are facing possible starvation this winter, and to push the majority away from homes and highways and into better habitat.
We're going to give you some maps of the hunt area.
Each bow hunter drawing a permit is required to attend an orientation course covering bow hunting skills, travel restrictions, and hunter ethics.
You're also going to be the ambassadors for hunting. And that's the reason that we want you here. We want this to be a quality hunt.
The quality of a hunt can be measured with many different yardsticks. For father and son team Larry and Blake Fisher, the most important measurement is the time spent together.
It's really nice spending time with your dad, because most of the time he's either working or all that other stuff that he has to do, and it's really nice being out here with him, just him and me, and I really enjoy it.
There's a group of them down over here, but we'd have to go clear around and get on them. At this point, they're in every pocket, so. This hunt's really nice because it's close to town, and with Blake still in high school, we're able to slip up here and, more than if we had, to go 100 miles. So it makes this hunt really special, being close. Coyote kind of just working a ridge just the same way we are.
Bow hunting, especially in terrain like this, requires preparation, patience, and perseverance.
Yeah, this is great. This is what we all pray for in the late hunt, is fresh snow. You know, so you're miserable and it's cold. And all late hunts are tough, but you know, there's just something special about being able to sneak around in the snow and see lots of animals. And hey, there's, you know, this time of year with the bucks following the does in a rut, you see some gigantic bucks, and there's always a possibility. You know, you can't give up hope.
One of the challenges of bow hunting is stalking the animal. A hunter must get within at least 30 yards before shooting.
Sometimes you see a big buck and you get all excited and you can't wait to sneak up on him. And big bucks give you patience, keep you slow down and sneaky.
But today, the elements are working against father and son. Crosswinds and a crunchy crust underfoot alert the deer, and they move away through the falling snow like silent ghosts. Responsible hunters like Larry and Blake treasure the tradition of the sport and the romance of stalking a wild animal with a primitive weapon. For this family, maintaining ethical hunting standards is as important as the hunt itself.
It's important because you're there, and your actions speak louder than words anytime you do anything. So, yeah, it's important.
Can I check your hunting license and permit?
Sure.
There's no license.
You guys have any luck today?
Perhaps not today, but maybe tomorrow. On this hunt, time is measured by moments treasured, the companionship of a son who has grown into a friend, and a shared appreciation for Idaho's wildlife world.
I probably learned everything I know from my dad about bow hunting. He taught me how to shoot one, he taught me how to sneak up on animals, he taught me how to be quiet, you know, taught me how to stay warm. Everything I learned from my dad.
Aerial seeding is the first step to restoring the area burned by the Foothills fire. A coalition of state and federal agencies, along with extraordinary support from private groups, has begun the arduous task of replanting miles of habitat. A big bucket is suspended beneath the belly of each helicopter. It's loaded with seed and sent off to spit its cargo over the blackened areas now blanketed in snow. Weather will be the key. If we have spring flooding and torrential rains, the bare hillsides will wash away and erosion will take a terrible toll. But biologist Jerry Schulten is hoping for a different scenario.
We're in the 7th year of drought, so we need moisture real bad. But we need gentle rains that are able to go down into the soil, or snowpack that melts slowly, that goes into the soil. The grasses will come back, there's no problem with that, but the shrub component I don't think will without some help from us.
Volunteers have heeded the call for help. About 45 people turned out on this sunny Saturday to gather sagebrush seeds.
You just take your tennis racket and hit it, and you see the seed coming off. We need tons, literally, of sagebrush seed, and we want to not only put this seed out on the ground this winter, but we want to start collecting seed and start making a seed bank, so that if we have a disaster like this again, we have some seed that we can put out right away.
It's a big job, one that would be impossible without volunteers.
These people are really here to work. You can see them out here on the hillside really going at it, yeah. That's some dedicated people in Idaho.
Take all that weight off you there.
Yeah.
It's amazing how heavy it gets, how fast, doesn't
Yeah,
it? Just
it
that
does.
little jag.
The things that we accomplish with volunteers, we simply couldn't do without their help.
They need volunteers. And I'm studying wildlife resources, and I just like to help the land. I like being outdoors. It's a great country.
They really care, and they feel like they can make a difference, and they do. I think that's what's neat. People realize that as individuals, they can make a difference.
And you can bet, as Fish and Game keeps a careful watch on wintering deer and elk through this critical season, there will be a whole crew of folks who will gladly give of their time and talents when called. A tribute to the people of Idaho and our extraordinary wildlife heritage. Our dry winters are also having a devastating effect on Idaho's rivers. Some of them are running at less than half their normal flow. For the fish and wildlife that depend on that water, it could be a very grim season indeed.
We do have one mayfly
which is one of the preferred food organisms for trout. Right here we have a caddisfly here. This is one of the nymphal stages.
Underwater, there is a whole world we sometimes forget about. The web of life spins around the rocks and cobbles lining a river. The plants feed the insects, caddisflies and mayflies are food for fish, and the rocks supply shelter for all. When half of the river channel is exposed, like here along the Boise River, the chain of life is broken, and the stability of this underwater world comes crashing down.
Right now we're at about half of the typical flow in the Boise River during the winter period. We should be seeing upwards of 150 cubic feet per second, or CFS. Right now we're at about 80.
This is what the Boise River looked like in the fall of 1989. It was running at 172 CFS, a little over the minimum stream flow requirements. Compare that to the same stretch in early December of this year at less than half of that stream flow. The rocks that normally would be underwater are exposed, and the insects that would be clinging to those rocks are nowhere to be found. This means considerably less food for trout when they need it the most. And if we have a cold winter, parts of this river are going to freeze and the fish will have nowhere to hide. Fish and game biologist Scott Grunder is sounding the alarm. The fish and wildlife that depend on the Boise River are in trouble, and something needs to be done.
There needs to be a more equitable way to manage water, and the way we do it now is not equitable.
The problem, ultimately, is the drought. But an underlying problem is the complicated maze of water right law that dates back to the turn of the century. When the original law was written in 1903, we didn't understand the impact low water flows have on fish and wildlife in a river. At the time Arrow Rock Dam was built in 1911, fish and wildlife were not recognized as a beneficial use for water. It wasn't until 1978 that a minimum stream flow law was enacted, adding fish and wildlife as a recognized beneficial use. But even this law does not put fish and wildlife on an equal basis with other water users. Priority water use still goes to those who established water rights first, and during a drought, very little is left for anything else. Until the folks of Idaho become concerned enough about their rivers to challenge this, the fish and wildlife will continue to finish in last place.
You can use, if you know your wavelength, you can set it, and then you can go ahead and test your transmittance or observance.
The Boise River is just one example of the problems associated with 6 years of drought. Throughout the West, we've all learned a very painful lesson. Water is a very precious resource. But this painful lesson is being transformed into a world of discovery by a handful of bright high school students in Cascade, Idaho. A very special science teacher is using a troubled reservoir to teach lessons in biology, chemistry, and physics, and lessons about life.
Okay, you can put your stuff down here. In autumn, your groups, get your water sample right off here. Now, when you go down there to wade, be real careful, check the depth and everything. Don't fall off over your head or anything.
The kids call him Mr. K.
Go ahead.
He appears to be the classic absent-minded professor, rambling about and joking with the students. But don't be deceived. His slow, easy manner is that of a person very comfortable with himself, one who has made the right choices in life. This is a teacher with the gift.
So are we getting pH readings?
Yeah, we got a 7.89.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's higher than we've ever got before.
The first thing that strikes you about Clint Kennedy's advanced biology class is a sense of eagerness, the wonderful feeling that here is a group of kids excited about learning, ready to explore with unbridled curiosity the mysteries of the scientific world.
And right now we just discovered that the lake just had a turnover because all the temperature in the lake is about 4 degrees, so we just witnessed a turnover. A turnover just means that doesn't literally mean turnover, it just means that all the layers in the lake have reached one layer of density.
Junior Stephanie Schutte goes on to explain such things as stratification layers and maximum density, sounding much like the future scientist she plans to be. But the goal of this class goes beyond studying the chemical, physical, and biological makeup of the lake. These students have undertaken a bigger project. The young scientists have entered a national contest called the Saco Youth Challenge. The assignment is to study a local environmental problem and propose a solution to it. For their project, the class has chosen to research ways to improve water quality in Cascade Reservoir, a daunting problem that has frustrated the community for years.
I think what surprised me most about this is the fact that our lake has so many problems that we really didn't know about. We didn't know how much algae there was necessarily other than what we saw. We didn't know the test levels, and we didn't know a lot of the technical numbers and stuff.
This is the phosphate test. We test it because of all the cattle around here, and if it's high phosphate level, that means we're getting a lot of irrigation and sewage within the lake. So this is one of our major contributors to our project.
We put chemicals in here to test for nitrates, and you stick it in this one, and then you take a clear sample and you put it in here, and then you just turn this wheel until the colors match, and it will give you a reading for how much nitrate is in the lake.
This excursion is just one of several trips into the field to study the lake. Samples are gathered at various locations and at different depths. The young researchers discovered that the overabundance of algae is partially a result of agricultural practices that deposit phosphates into the reservoir. Too much algae robs oxygen from the water, causing fish and wildlife to suffer. But the next lesson the students learn goes beyond science and into the world of politics and compromise. Lessons on life.
What I ask my students to do is to think. And to think, you have to be presented with all sides of an issue. You can't take economics out of an environmental issue and solve it. You can't take politics out of it and solve it. You have to meet everybody's needs. And that's been one of my goals.
Mr. K has invited a wide spectrum of folks to speak to the class, ranging from representatives of the Forest Service and Department of Environmental Quality to the agricultural community and area developers. For these young people, it is a wonderful introduction to the skills of gathering information, negotiating compromise, and weighing solutions.
We didn't know anything about the lake or our surroundings. We were really quite oblivious to it, and now we understand the problems and what needs to be done, and we understand the complexity of the problem. We understand why they can't just solve it. We know now that you can't just solve things that quickly. You have to put some time into it and take into account all the agencies and everybody that's involved.
Returning to the lab, the students run their water samples through another series of tests, using scientific terminology that most of us never learned or have long forgotten.
If you know your wavelength, you can set it, and then you can go ahead and test your transmittance or absorbance.
The young scientists perform the test using equipment with intimidating names like spectrophotometer, pipettes, and a new field computer called the Vernier Computer Interface. On the other side of the room, beakers are filled from a tank of lake water. A whole new world of tiny water organisms opens up under the microscopes. Most of the young people in this class will graduate from high school with 5 sciences and 4 math courses, well above the national average. The small community of Cascade strongly supports education, and as a result, the school has reaped some impressive awards. In 1990, the U.S. Department of Education named it one of the top schools in the nation. Last year, Red Book magazine rated Cascade High School as the best in Idaho. Not bad for a town of 800. But the real key is people.
Mr. K, he makes this very interesting for us. He makes us feel really important. And I really believe that all science teachers should put an idea like this into young minds that they can help out in the environment. And it's easier than you think as long as you have an open mind about it, and if a teacher can make it interesting.
For Clint Kennedy, the goal is to teach a lesson that goes beyond the textbooks and into something much more intrinsic, a lesson about life.
I want them to be able to solve problems. I want them to know what it takes to approach a problem and what it takes to actually be able to solve any kind of life problem.
This from a man who seems to have made the right choices in his life. This from a teacher with the gift.
I think when I came from being a logger to start teaching, I was pretty worried about how I would interact with high school age kids. And it's been a lot better than I ever thought it would be. It really has been. And that's certainly what keeps me teaching. The satisfaction of watching these kids develop is, it's great. It's great.
There's a place in Idaho that early pioneers described as being as close to hell as you can get without actually being there. A place so desolate that even the Shoshone Indians avoided it in their annual migration from the Snake River to the Camas Prairie. Even for many visitors today, first impressions of the craters of the moon are that it is only so much black rock. The harsh volcanic landscape can appear barren, bleak and dismal, especially in winter. The closer observation will reveal a land of many contrasts. The craggy edges of the lava craters softened by the velvet blanket of winter.